let's get something out of the way, out of the gate. The last time we spoke about Danzig, it didn't necessarily go very flawlessly. It was about a covers album, and its real reason for existence was honorable enough. And to be fair, there was some work on there that was pretty damn good, considering Glenn himself does have a voice that is suitable for some of the tracks that he opted to cover. But let's talk about original material. Let's talk about his brand new album entitled Black Laden Crown. Now, this is kind of interesting, considering this is an album that almost, by title alone, doesn't feel like it should belong perhaps in the Danzig discography. Perhaps this is something that you would maybe expect from a different band, such as Black Crown Initiative. Maybe it's just because of the presence of the word black. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but whenever you look at this title, something about it, even though it feels like it could be in Danzig's wheelhouse, still feels off. Perhaps it's partially because of the semi-bad taste that was left in our mouths after the last time we spoke about him. But this is a 9-track affair, a 45-minute-long effort, and Danzig, of course, like a lot of those aging rock veterans from the 1970s, is certainly now starting to advance in age. That trademark howl that has become so synonymous with tracks by the Misfits, and of course from his own solo catalog with tracks such as Mother, still being seen as important rock staples today, has definitely aged quite a bit. And really the recording process and the overall way in which this is presented can feel a little bit wonky as a result. Take, for example, the very first couple of tracks off of this album. And you have to really give Danzig a little bit of credit. He starts off with a 6-minute track to really get this thing going. A 6-minute long opener, the title track, then going into Eyes Ripping Fire and Devil on Highway 9. Devil on Highway 9 almost feels like a track that, if it wasn't so doom-laden with heavy and aggressive riffing, almost like he's trying to go into the traditional heavy metal catalog via bands such as, I don't know, King Diamond, on the compositional scale, musically, not on the vocal scale, believe me. We'll get to that. It just doesn't feel like the same gentleman that was howling out songs such as Die, Die, My Darling. But at the same time, The Devil on Highway 9 also, just by title alone, sounds directly into his wheelhouse, almost as though it would be some sort of strange, like video that you would eventually see on Mystery Science Theater and enjoy so much that you'd want to have a copy of it for yourself, and then realize that what made the video was, all of the ramblings that were going on over top of it. Danzig's voice is just not simply as strong as it used to be, and this is not something that's necessarily his fault. It's something that also feels a little bit overcompensated by the fact that his vocals are layered over top of the music. So you kind of get this little fade of the music into the background. You can definitely tell that in order to try to elevate the strength of his voice a little bit more, in the production bench, they definitely aim to amplify it a little bit in order to give it some extra panache. And it's something that works only to a certain degree. And you notice on these first 3 tracks, which is also, by the way, a brilliant sort of forewarning for the remainder of the album, is that his voice is kind of a tailor-made downfall for this album. It's something that actually causes this to really reap some disbenefit as opposed to reek of awesome. And really the reason for this is quite simple. With that strength of his voice in mind, this music that's flurrying around it is exceptional. You have very well-crafted, sort of rock and metal, sort of doom-crafted riffs, almost as though Sabbath decided to take a little bit of a thrash vacation. Either that, or once again, studied some of the old Andy LaRock pagan metal or, dark metal instances from the early 1980s in order to deliver some really interesting and pretty well-crafted backdrops. The problem, though, is that they don't feel like they go very far, and really whenever it comes to just sort of bombarding you with memory after memory, this is one that feels a little bit flat, almost as though these crafted ideas would have been better suited had they been released about 15 to 20 years ago. It's just something that didn't feel like it worked as sterlingly well as it did on an album from a band such as Hell, whenever we heard that stuff surface, which of course features Andy, which is interesting enough, not to mention also had a real Sabbath backdrop to it. This really doesn't. This instead feels like an attempt to be a bit, a bit trademark, while at the same time attempting something a little bit brazen. And it just doesn't feel very strong. It doesn't bear a lot of memory. But going into a track such as The Witching Hour, which also nearly touches the 6-minute barrier, the one thing about this is the slowed down cadence of it. It's one that definitely has more of that Doom credibility. And once again, this is probably one of the strengths, considering this is almost a perfect place for Glenn Danzig's voice to be in 2017. You can almost hear him doing these slow, mournful howls over elongated Doom riffs, almost as though he belongs in some sort of strange Candlemass tribute band. No, he's definitely nowhere close to Messiah, but at the same time, you could certainly see where that influence could easily perhaps benefit him a little more in these aging hours. The second half of this album is kind of the same. It doesn't bear very much memory, but once again is filled with enough interesting ideas on the musical scale to keep you not only interested, but still going forward on this disc. Once again, it's hard to really give Danzig a lot of grief for his vocals, considering his trademark howl was already so very different to a lot of the different things that you saw out there, especially whenever he debuted. The problem is that it's now 2017. It's now no longer all of that strange, and it's not based around just the fact that he's getting older, but music itself has evolved. Music itself has now really given away to bands such as Silencer, which, whoa, that's an assault on the eardrums. This isn't quite there. But overall, this is a disc that, for all of its, semi-decent ideas, just doesn't exactly carve a very large memory for you. And based off of that notion, it comes off as just a very average disc, as opposed to being above average or exceptional. And this is a disc that its 13 out of 30 score may feel like it's a little bit harsh, but it's based around the idea of memory. It's based off of what you take away from the 9 tracks that are presented here, and what you're able to recall after that final note has been strummed. And the problem is that you don't recall much. You recall more so some of those huge riffs, and you maybe want to revisit that. Definitely some that you get on Devil on Highway 9, which is, once again, I would consider a highlight along with The Witching Hour. But then you take a look at some tracks such as Pull the Sun or But a Nightmare, and it almost feels like Glenn's trying as hard as he can to really reclaim some of that old school luster whenever a track as simple as Mother was really able to deliver him success. This is definitely not going to deliver him the same concept. He should have maybe gone back a little bit further, not really past Mother, but back to Death Red Sabbath, where it felt like every single track that he was presenting had a certain veneer to it. And somehow that sterling snarl was able to illuminate instead of be a detriment, considering the aggression was a little bit more present. But I want to know what you guys think about Black Laden Crown by Danzig. Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know what your favorite Danzig/Misfits era Danzig material is. I'm Cover Killer Nation, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.